Hey everyone, and welcome to another deep dive. Today, we're diving into something that's pretty much running the world these days.
Yeah,
Semiconductors, those tiny chips inside our phones and computers.
right.
Cars, even refrigerators. You've provided a ton of fascinating material, mostly excerpts from Chip War. And get ready, because this deep dive is about way more than just tech.
Oh, yeah, definitely.
We're talking geopolitics,
Mhm.
global power, and the future of computing itself.
What's fascinating is that the history of semiconductors is a story of intense rivalry, groundbreaking innovation, and some really high-stakes maneuvering on the world stage.
Yeah, it's about to get interesting. For instance, did you know that your iPhone's most advanced chips
Yeah.
can only be made in Taiwan?
Really?
Yeah, that's right. This little island is kind of a big deal in the world of semiconductors. But to understand how we got here,
Hmm.
we need to go back in time, all the way to World War II.
It might seem a little bit surprising, but World War II, a typhoon of steel, as it's often called, was also a catalyst for a lot of technological innovation, including the development of early computers.
Wait, so amidst all the chaos and fighting, they were building computers.
Yeah.
That's wild. What did these early computers even look like?
So picture this. Giant room-sized machines filled with thousands of vacuum tubes. ENIAC, one of the first general-purpose computers, a perfect example. It was revolutionary for its time, but incredibly challenging to maintain. Those vacuum tubes were bulky, unreliable, and get this, they attracted moths.
What?
Yeah, so imagine trying to debug a computer
Yeah.
with actual bugs flying around.
Okay, that's both hilarious and terrifying. So how did they get from these clunky, bug-infested machines to the sleek, powerful chips we have today?
That's where the story of semiconductors really begins. Enter William Shockley, a brilliant, albeit somewhat difficult physicist, working at Bell Labs. He was focused on this then obscure material, semiconductors.
Semiconductors, okay, refresh my memory here. What exactly are semiconductors?
Think of them as materials that can conduct electricity under certain conditions. So Shockley, along with his colleagues John Bardeen and Walter Brentheen, harnessed this unique property to invent the transistor. It was this tiny device that could amplify and switch electronic signals, essentially replacing those bulky vacuum tubes with something smaller, faster, and much more reliable.
So the transistor was like the seed
Yeah.
from which the entire chip industry grew.
Absolutely.
It's amazing how something so small could have such a massive impact.
And the story gets even more intriguing when we consider the context of the Cold War. The U.S. military, seeing the potential of transistors and integrated circuits, poured funding into research and development. This led to the rise of companies like Texas Instruments, Fairchild Semiconductor, and the birth of Silicon Valley as we know it.
It's fascinating how government funding can be such a powerful driver of innovation. But the Soviets weren't just sitting back and watching, rather.
Oh, absolutely not.
They were in a race to catch up.
The Soviets were desperate to keep pace with the U.S., even resorting to espionage. There's this incredible story of two American defectors, Alfred Sarant and Joel Barr, who helped build the Soviet computer industry using stolen technology.
Hold on, so it was like a real-life spy thriller playing out in the world of chips.
Pretty much, yeah.
That's insane. Were the Soviets able to close the gap at all?
Well, they made some progress, but they couldn't replicate the unique ecosystem of innovation that flourished in Silicon Valley. It was this constant back and forth with the U.S. pushing boundaries and the Soviets trying to keep up.
This tiny technology was at the heart of a global power struggle. Mind-blowing.
Yeah.
But we can't forget about Japan. They became a major player in the chip industry too, right?
They absolutely did. In the 1980s, Japan, with its focus on manufacturing excellence and strong government support, became a dominant force, particularly in a type of memory chip called DRAM, or dynamic random access memory.
Yeah.
Think of DRAM like your computer's short-term memory, holding the data it's actively using.
Ah, okay. That makes sense. I remember reading about Akio Morita, the co-founder of Sony. He seemed like a visionary leader who really pushed Japan to the forefront of the electronics world.
Morita was a key figure. He saw the potential of semiconductors and advocated for Japan to become a global tech leader. However, Japan's dominance wouldn't last forever.
Wait, what happened? Why did Japan fall behind?
That's where things get really interesting, and it's a crucial lesson for anyone trying to understand the dynamics of the chip industry. Japan's story is a reminder that being a pioneer isn't enough. You have to anticipate the next big thing and adapt.
Okay, I'm hooked. Tell me more. What did Japan miss?
Well, to understand Japan's decline, we need to look at the rise of the personal computer. or PC.
Okay.
Around this time, a company called Intel was making a bold move, shifting their focus to microprocessors, the brains of these new PCs.
So while Japan was focused on DRAM, Intel was betting big on the PC revolution.
Exactly. And it turned out to be a brilliant move. The PC market just exploded, and Intel's microprocessors became the industry standard. But here's the thing. Many of Japan's major DRAM producers didn't really prioritize the PC market. They were so focused on maintaining their dominance in DRAM, which was already a huge market.
So they missed the boat, so to speak. They were stuck in the past
Yeah.
while Intel was shaping the future.
That's a great way to put it. And to make matters worse, Japan missed out on another crucial innovation: flash memory.
Flash memory, isn't that what we use in our smartphones and USB drives?
That's right. It's a type of memory that can store data even when the power is turned off, unlike DRAM, which needs a constant flow of electricity to retain data.
Right.
And get this, it was actually a Japanese engineer at Toshiba who invented flash memory.
No way. So Japan had the technology,
Yeah.
but didn't see its potential.
Now, unfortunately, yes. Toshiba didn't fully grasp the revolutionary impact that flash memory would have. Instead, it was Intel yet again who recognized its value and brought it to market.
Wow. So even being at the forefront of innovation doesn't guarantee success if you don't have the vision to see where the market is heading. That's a tough lesson for Japan. But this whole story about Intel and their strategic moves, it reminds me of something we talked about earlier, the importance of adapting to new markets.
You're absolutely right. It's a recurring theme in the semiconductor industry. Companies that can anticipate those big shifts in technology and consumer demand are the ones that thrive.
Okay, so Intel was riding the PC wave, Japan was struggling to adapt. What was happening elsewhere in the world?
Well, this is where the story shifts to Taiwan, and a pivotal figure named Morris Chang, he founded a company called Taiwan Semiconductor Manufacturing Company, or TSMC, and it's no exaggeration to say that TSMC revolutionized the entire chip industry.
TSMC, that name rings a bell. I know they're a major player in the semiconductor world today, but how did they get so big?
TSMC's success can be attributed to several factors, but perhaps the most significant was their innovative business model. You see, before TSMC, if you wanted to design and manufacture chips, you had to invest billions of dollars in building and maintaining your own fabrication facilities. Those expensive shark pools, as they're sometimes called.
Yeah, I remember reading about those fabs. They're incredibly complex and expensive to operate.
Exactly. And this was a major barrier for smaller companies, or those who just wanted to focus on chip design. TSMC changed all that with what's called the foundry model.
Okay, break it down for me. What's the foundry model?
It's actually quite simple. TSMC doesn't design its own chips. Instead, they manufacture chips designed by other companies. Think of them like a specialized factory that takes blueprints from various clients and turns them into actual chips.
So TSMC was like the ultimate enabler, providing the manufacturing muscle for companies
Yeah,
that wanted to focus on design and innovation.
that's a great way to put it. This model lowered the barrier to entry for countless companies, leading to an explosion of innovation in the chip design space.
Genius. No wonder TSMC became so successful. But there's got to be more to this story, right? What else contributed to their rise?
Well, apart from their revolutionary business model, TSMC built a reputation for unmatched manufacturing excellence. They consistently delivered high-quality chips on time and at scale. This reliability made them a trusted partner for companies like Apple, Qualcomm, and countless others.
So TSMC was like a reliable engine powering the global tech industry.
Exactly. And they also benefited from strong government support in Taiwan, which recognized the strategic importance of the semiconductor industry. This support helped TSMC grow and become the global powerhouse it is today.
But this brings us back to geopolitics, doesn't it? Taiwan's dominance in chip manufacturing has put it
Right.
at the center of global power struggles.
Especially with China.
You've hit the nail on the head. China has been striving to become self-sufficient in semiconductors for years, driven by concerns over national security and a desire to reduce its reliance on Taiwan. That makes sense. But as we've seen, becoming a leader in chip manufacturing is no easy feat. What challenges has China faced in its quest to catch up?
Well, despite pouring massive resources into developing its domestic chip industry, China has struggled to master some of the most advanced technologies, right? EUV lithography.
EUV lithography. That's the cutting-edge technology used to create the most advanced chips, right?
Yes.
The one that ASML, a Dutch company, has a monopoly on.
That's the one. And this reliance on foreign companies for essential tools and software has become a major vulnerability for China. They've also faced accusations of intellectual property theft, which has further complicated their efforts to gain a foothold in the global chip market.
It seems like every step of the way, the semiconductor industry is shaped by this complex web of technology, dot economics, and geopolitics.
You're absolutely right. And this dynamic continues to play out today, with companies like Apple relying heavily on TSMC for their most advanced chips, while China strives to catch up. But before we delve into the current landscape and what it means for the future, let's pause here for a moment.
Sounds good to me. This has been a whirlwind tour through the history of chips. What are your thoughts so far?
Yeah.
Any key takeaways that are particularly striking? It's amazing how these tiny chips have been at the center of so much drama, espionage, fierce competition, even global power struggles.
Yeah.
It really highlights how crucial semiconductors are to, well, pretty much everything.
Absolutely. And as we move into the present day, the stakes just keep getting higher. We were talking about China's ambition to become a major player in semiconductors. And to achieve that, they've been using a variety of tactics, some more controversial than others.
Okay, spill the tea. What kind of tactics are we talking about?
Well, one strategy has been to try and acquire foreign companies, along with their valuable intellectual property. A prime example is the case of Fujian Jinhua, a Chinese state-backed company that tried to steal trade secrets from Micron, a leading American memory chip maker.
Hold on, steal trade secrets? How did they even attempt that?
It was a pretty audacious move. They used this network of employees and collaborators, including some folks who had actually worked at Micron, to illegally download confidential files containing Micron's manufacturing processes and chip designs. It was a high-stakes corporate espionage operation.
Wow, that's straight out of a spy movie. So what did they get away with it?
Not quite. The U.S. government caught wind of what was going on and intervened to protect Micron's intellectual property. This led to a series of legal battles and heightened tensions between the U.S. and China.
This whole situation really underscores how those choke points in the chip supply chain have become strategic battlegrounds.
Exactly. Control over these choke points gives countries and companies immense power and leverage. One of the most striking examples is the U.S. government's ability to restrict the sale of chips and chip-making equipment. Huawei, the Chinese tech giant.
Yeah, I remember that causing quite a stir. Why was Huawei targeted specifically?
Well, Huawei had become a global leader in 5G technology and was seen as a potential threat to U.S. dominance in the tech sector. The U.S. government argued that Huawei posed national security risks and used its control over the semiconductor supply chain to try and curb the company's growth.
So even though chips are designed and manufactured all over the world, the U.S. still holds a lot of cards, so to speak, through its control of these key choke points.
Precisely, the U.S. government's actions against Huawei really highlighted just how crucial semiconductors are to national security and global economic power.
It sounds like the semiconductor industry is becoming increasingly polarized with the U.S. and China in a constant battle for dominance.
There's definitely a growing sense of competition and even confrontation between these two superpowers. And this tension was really amplified by the recent global chip shortage.
Oh, yeah. How could I forget? It felt like everything was delayed or out of stock.
Yeah.
Cars, phones, game consoles.
Right.
It's a real wake-up call for a lot of people.
Absolutely. The chip shortage exposed just how vulnerable the global supply chain is and how reliant we've become on these tiny pieces of silicon. It prompted governments around the world to rethink their strategies and prioritize domestic chip production.
It's wild to think that these tiny chips
Yeah.
have such an outsized impact on the world.
It really is. And as we look to the future, the importance of computing power is only going to increase, especially with the rise of artificial intelligence. Or AI.
AI, that's the technology everyone's talking about these days. How do semiconductors fit into the AI picture?
Well, AI requires massive amounts of computing power to process and analyze vast amounts of data. And one of the key players in the AI revolution is NVIDIA, a company that specializes in graphics processing units, or GPUs.
I've heard that term before. Aren't those used for video games and stuff?
They are, but they're also incredibly well-suited for the complex calculations needed for AI.
So NVIDIA is kind of a big deal in the world of AI.
Oh, absolutely. They've become one of the most valuable chip companies in the world, even though they're a fabulous company, meaning they don't manufacture their own chips. They rely on TSMC for that.
Wait, so even as China is trying to build up its own chip industry, it's still dependent on companies like NVIDIA and TSMC.
Exactly, and this dependence highlights the long road ahead for China. If they want to achieve true semiconductor independence, they might be able to produce their own chips, but catching up to the technological and manufacturing expertise of industry leaders like TSMC and NVIDIA will be a long and difficult process.
It seems like the semiconductor industry is constantly evolving, with new challenges and opportunities emerging all the time.
That's a great observation. And as we wrap up our deep dive, here's a final thought for you to ponder. We've seen how semiconductors have shaped the world, from the Cold War to the rise of AI. If computing power continues to grow and influence every aspect of our lives, what does that mean for your future?
That's a really thought-provoking question. This deep dive has been an incredible journey, taking us from those early clunky computers to the global power struggles and technological innovations of the chip industry today. We've covered espionage, market shifts, geopolitical tensions, and the relentless pursuit of ever more powerful chips. It's been a fascinating exploration of a technology that truly shapes our world. Thanks for joining us on this deep dive.